You are listening to I Hate Average podcast featuring Jay from the Bronx.
Alright, so I'm back. I Hate Average podcast. It's Jay. Wow, it's been a couple of weeks. Haven't talked to y'all in a while, but back at it. I'm excited. We got another cool guest. Our last guest, Sevilla Morgan. Great guest, great insight. Definitely a different conversation. We were speaking about the 21st Century Hannah Project and being motherless not by choice. So definitely some cool information, a different type of episode, a different type of conversation. But this week we're back with something a little bit more lighthearted. We got Harry Terjanian from the Beige Phillip Show podcast. That podcast is about it's a comedy / relationship podcast. But I didn't want to deal with the relationship advice aspect of Harry. I wanted to talk to him about what it's like, being a comedian, what got him started in comedy, some of his, friends and family's reaction towards him being a comedian and not taking the usual path, him being an immigrant and still deciding, let me take the entertainment route instead of becoming a lawyer, a doctor, like basically how your family would want you to be. So it was definitely a cool conversation I had with Harry Terjanian. You're gonna see some you're gonna hear an aspect of me, something that I didn't even know existed, but I guess I'm that guy. Every time someone is around a comedian, they kind of want to try to make the comedian laugh. So there's a couple of times where I was like, what am I doing? Why am I saying that to him? But it's something that maybe I guess everyone deals with when they're around someone who's a comedian. You always want to try to make that comedian laugh. Of course it didn't work. He wasn't laughing. He was just having a conversation. But it's definitely a cool conversation that I had with Harry. Something that you might want to check out and ponder just when you're dealing with life. You're doing things that you're passionate about instead of following the path that you assume that people will want you to be. But in the end, people want you to be happy, and of course you're going to be happy regardless. So there is no alternative. Either you're happy or you're not. And we actually end this show on a very motivational tip. So definitely check out my conversation with Harry. Here it is. All right, everyone. I'm here with Harry Terjanian. He is a comedian from New York. He has a hit podcast, along with other things, doing voiceover work. I see he's also doing some things with underground wrestling. Harry, thank you so much for your time.
Hey, thanks, buddy. Yeah, I'm doing a lot of too many jobs, but that's the business.
Definitely. So I wanted to talk to you just to see how it is being a New York comedian. I like to speak to people who take a different path in life, and definitely being a New York comedian, that's definitely a different path. So how did you get started with that?
Well, when I was a kid, I gravitated towards comedy a lot because I loved watching television.
Okay.
And I was just home all day. I was not really, even though I liked sports, I just didn't like running. I would play sports, but I wouldn't just like run around. Like kids, kids just run around. I didn't see the point of that when TV was so much more interesting. So,
okay.
I would watch a lot of TV, and then I just started gravitating towards comedy because Comedy Central had just come out. So I'd watch Kids in the Hall and Monty Python and Saturday Night Live and all that stuff. And then
definitely.
Also, you know what it was? Also, when I was a kid, there was no kids programming back then, 24 hours a day.
That's true.
So like at night, once 8 o'clock hit, they did away with all the kids programming.
Yeah.
So if you were home, the only thing you could watch was like Cops and America's Most Wanted or whatever was on.
That's comedy right there.
Yeah. So you'd watch that. Well, no, I couldn't watch it now I can watch Cops and it's funny, but as a kid, I didn't find it funny.
Yeah.
I just, it was just like bizarre that those people existed. People just being arrested for smoking crack and saying, like, this is dark. Now it's hilarious. But
Yeah.
anyways, the point is, I find anything, and I watch. They'd have stand-up comedy shows on at that, and that was the thing I gravitate towards.
Okay.
So I started enjoying comedy, and then I knew I wanted to do it since I was young, since I was like 14. So I just started writing a lot of material, and then eventually, it wasn't until I was 18 that I finally worked up,
The
the courage to get on stage while I was still in high school. I think my senior year of high school, I started doing stand-up and going to open mics and bringer shows.
That's pretty
stuff
cool.
like
'Cause
that.
it's interesting to me because it's like comedians do every day everyone else's greatest fear. Everyone's greatest fear is public speaking, and that's what comedians wish to do. It's interesting to me.
Well, it's also really ironic because I am maybe not as much now, but definitely I was super shy as a kid, like really shy. Like I didn't like talking to anybody. Although looking back, the only time I didn't mind doing like oral presentations or anything where you got to speak in front of the class. I liked doing that.
Okay.
Even though because it was like a captive audience, but yeah, day to day, I don't like talking to people. I don't have to. Not because I don't want to. I just kind of like, I just like keeping it myself. Yeah. So everybody's fear is that, which is ironic.
Yeah.
I think Seinfeld once said that. What was his joke about it? Yeah. The first fear is speaking in public. The second one is death.
Yeah.
So if you're at a funeral, you'd rather be in the box than speaking, giving the eulogy.
That's it's a good way of thinking about it, but it's true. It's very true.
Yeah.
So first, while we're talking, I want to also admit that I kind of got the concept of naming the show "I Hate Average Podcast" after I heard the name of your website, "I Hate Comedy." I said, let me take. I always say I listen to your podcast and always listen to you plug your website. And I said, man, what am I going to name my podcast? And I just said, you know what? I blog sometimes and I use the moniker Average J. So I said, you know what? Let me just go with I Hate Average. So
well, plagiarism is the sincerest form of flattery. You do realize.
Yeah, but thank you for the idea. Thank you.
No, man, go for it. I'm glad. Yeah, I hate average too. Yeah, I don't know. You'd like to be better than average, but it's easier said than done. But that's the beauty of it. Like in life, think about it this way, right? Like 99% of people who do anything suck at it. Like if you think of just baseball, right? Like even the worst baseball player in the major leagues is better than 99% of the people who play baseball at any given moment.
You're absolutely right. You're right.
Yeah. So, yeah, no matter what, there's always somebody worse, I guess.
You're right. So when you first started comedy, are you able to admit were you bad, or is something that you kind of grasp kind of easily?
Well, in theory, everybody's bad when they first start doing comedy. I did something that not a lot of people do. I knew I wanted to do comedy at like 13 or 14, but the idea, like, well, where do you go at 13 or 14? And I was like, I'm not allowed to go. In hindsight, I also wasn't living in New York at the time. I was born here, but I did about 2 years or so in Florida.
Oh, wow.
And so in my head, it's like, all right, well, where do I go to do comedy? I guess I can't go anywhere, so I just would write down ideas and bits. So I spent about 4 years writing before I ever stepped foot on a stage, before I finally was able to do that. So my material was actually pretty good for somebody who had never done it before.
Yeah,
because
he was ready.
Yeah, I went through well, everybody who starts in comedy sucks. Like that's the only way to get good is to just a process of trial and error.
Yeah.
And you can take all the joke writing classes and people can give you, but you just have to write bad joke after bad joke until you weed it out, and then you kind of learn what's funny and what's interesting and what works for your style. So I managed to do that before I ever stepped foot on stage. So I wasn't that bad. My stage presence needed work, but the other thing about comedy is, unfortunately, it's not about who's the funniest all the time. So there were a lot of people who had been in the business and were hosting shows that I was on that I was already funnier than. Not often,
but they
but
was hosting.
Whoever's hosting, whoever's hosting the, bringer show or the, the crappy open mic usually is not the best of the best. You know what I mean? Like those people don't, Bill Burr right now isn't hosting any,
the 42nd Street
bringer shows or open mics. Yeah. So, but I wasn't great at it. It took a while to get really to the level I want to be at, and to the level where I was a really strong comedian. Yeah, it takes a lot of time before most people suck when they start.
Definitely, yes. Okay, I can understand that. So, when your family, because it's something everyone's family wants them to be great in school, go to college, and be doctors or lawyers. When you grasp yourself, I want to go into comedy and I want to be serious about it. Was your family, were they into it, or you just didn't care?
I knew enough to know at that point that I didn't care what my family thought, that I knew they weren't going to like it. To the point where I didn't tell them I was doing comedy for about 2 months when I first started doing it. I mean, the only problem was I was, at that point, I never went out anywhere before comedy. Like, I didn't go to I didn't do anything. I just stayed home every night. And then all of a sudden, starting around like April or May of 2001,
you going out every night?
I was out every night till like 1 or 2 in the morning and coming back. And then my mom was still doing my laundry at that point because she did everyone's laundry in the house. So she smelled my clothes, they reek of cigarettes. Because back then you could still smoke in bars and clubs, even though they had like a non-smoking section, which was a joke because it's like half the room is the smoking section. They would have an in-room and there was no like ventilation. It was ridiculous. So and so they were like worried about that, but I wasn't drinking, and they couldn't really say much. But when they did find out about it, they were not particularly supportive. But I knew at that point that I did not care. I knew that to some extent I understand why they wouldn't be thrilled about it, because they're immigrants from another country, and so they come here with the hope that you're going to achieve something great, and you decide that you're going to go off and join the circus is not exactly what the whole purpose of them coming over here. But
exactly, that's not the American dream at all. That's not.
No, not for them. Yeah, they're like, well, how are you supposed? Because I understand when you come from another, especially where they came from. There weren't any comedians there were no Armenian comedians or Ecuadorian comedians that you made your money that way, because that's where my parents are from, different countries. So they're like, what is this all about? Where are you going? What are you like? Don't you want to go make some money? To them, I wasn't even attempting to make money. To them, they just think I'm going off to tell jokes. Like, no, I'd like to make money doing this, but it's going to take a while. And it's still, to be honest, I still don't make my full living from doing comedy. I'm not going to pretend that I do, but I understand why they hated it. The idea of it. They've seen me perform, and my mom is, they enjoy it when they come out, and my dad doesn't bother me about it anymore. So,
are they fans? Do they laugh when they go see you, or
they laugh when they go see me? My mom hasn't seen me. I stopped bringing her like 10 years ago, I think I started. She hasn't been to one in 10 years because I don't remember the last time she just, I think, got into a fight with the manager or something. Like, this was early on. I was like, all right, that's it for you. You can't.
That's it. No more free tickets. No more.
Yeah. Although I took my dad, and the last time my dad came out to see me, I think he, every once in a while I'll take my dad with me just because we're hanging out or something, and I'll just, just come with me. He's got nothing to do. He's like 65, so he's like, all right,
might as well.
He's excited about stuff. I'll take him to all the open mics every once in a while. I don't do a ton, but every once in a while I'll do an open mic or some weird cafe show that he'll come with me, and he has a blast, and he enjoys it. And although one time I took him, he came out to see us perform live. We did the podcast, the Beige Phillip Show podcast, live at Caroline's.
Okay.
And I think he stole a coffee mug because he felt the coffee was overpriced. So he took the mug with him as sort of a. as a consolation gift to go, all right, $16 or whatever they were charging for coffee. And
It must be
like,
free if they give it.
Could have been. Yeah. Yeah, that's his mentality.
Yeah.
If it wasn't free, he's like, well, it's free now.
Exactly.
You're not going to take $8 from me or whatever the coffee was.
Yeah.
So yeah, but they weren't supportive. But it's like it's not their life. And they're certainly also not the people who I look to find happiness, because they weren't happy. My dad's a good guy, and I've had a lot of fun moments, but ultimately I don't think he was ever happy, like fully content with life, because he was busy working 7 days a week to build everything.
Trying to follow, I guess, a false American dream that it.
Well, you know what? At the time, it wasn't false. It's become less and less real. But, I mean, he worked 7 days a week. He was able to buy a house, and then they took that house, made repairs, sold it, and they bought a better house. And
that's great. Then
they had enough money. So there was a time where, the American dream was a real thing. Yeah. It's just, this is the mid-'90s, probably the last portion where there was still an opportunity to work your way up, because the economy was fairly decent, but the minimum wage hasn't gone up that much. I don't remember what it was in '94, but I think in Jersey, where I'm living now, it's something like $8.50 is the minimum wage, which is absurd.
And it's been like that for 10, 15 years, right?
Something like it might have been. I mean, the last bump might have been like 25 cents 8 years ago, or something like that.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So the cost of living has gone up, but the money hasn't. So, but back then, you could work, and he still had to work for it too. I mean, it wasn't easy. When I say 7 days a week, I mean literally, he was working 7 days a week. He was a wedding videographer on the weekends, and during the week he worked as an AV tech at the NYU College of Dentistry. So, yeah, he was working his ass off, and
he's, I guess in his mind, he's saying, when you tell him you want to be a comedian, I work for this.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, like he literally broke his back so I could tell dick jokes, and he wasn't exactly thrilled about it, which I understand. But at the same time, it's it's your life, and you have to live it, not them.
That's true. Very true. Yeah. So I want to talk, because you mentioned the Beige Phillip Show. You're a co-host on the show, and you speak about relationships. So you told me about how you told your family. How do you, let's say you meet a woman, you're interested, how do you go about saying, I'm a comedian? How is that introduced?
To a woman, or to my? What do you mean?
To a woman, a prospective woman that you're dating.
Oh, there's no shame in that. They like that. It's exotic to them. If anything, I feel bad that they get way too into the idea of you being a comedian, because it's actually, you're like, oh yeah, you're really excited about this. This is going to be disappointing for you, isn't it? Yeah, no, that's never a problem, because it's very exotic to them, because it's a cool profession. So it's amazing. It's something most people don't get to do. So there's no shame in that. There's no shame in that. It's always annoying when you have another job, and I try never to tell people at any other job I work that I'm a comedian. Eventually they find out, because I also don't, I don't have a false name or a showbiz name or anything. So they'll find out. But I never want to tell people when I have a regular job, or, when I'm doing contract stuff like video production stuff for people who are, not in the comedy world or showbiz. Because then, it's like, oh, tell us a joke. It's like, it doesn't work that way.
I'm trying to work now.
Yeah. But not only that, but everybody is like, oh, I bet you read a lot of material about this place. Like, no, this place stinks. There's nothing going on here. You guys are boring individuals. Yeah, no, there's nothing funny here. It's, until something tragic happens here, then they never bring up. Like when, somebody gets fired for sexual harassment, nobody comes and goes, you're going to write bits about that? Then I'd be like, fuck yeah, of course. Yeah. Now that's interesting.
That's when you take out your pen.
Oh, did somebody say something racist at work? Oh, well, see, now that's interesting and funny because it's tragic.
Yeah.
But yeah, day to day, the copy machine not working. Yeah, I don't have bits on that. Sorry.
Nah.
Yeah.
I don't know. So, how long has it been you doing comedy? How long has it been?
About 12 years at this point,
Wow.
something like that. Oh no, wait, it makes no more than that. Jeez, it's been like 60 years.
Wow.
I lost track of that when I started, but I mean, I didn't, I was kind of doing that and going to school. I mean, I've heavily been pursuing it for the last 10, but even while I was doing comedy, the other part of the reason my parents didn't really give me too much crap about it was I was doing everything they would have wanted me to do.
So
You know what I mean? I wasn't a comedian
following
who,
other passions.
sleeping in the basement of their house or whatever, like with no job. I was still working, or, I was paying rent. I was going to school.
Yeah, so they
I had graduated from college.
Oh,
so
good.
yeah, they couldn't fully complain about any of it.
Yeah.
So I forgot your question. Ironically, wait, what was the question?
And the question was, I forgot. Also, the question was,
oh, geez.
I was asking how long you've been doing comedy.
Oh yeah. I did answer it. Yeah, about that long, 16 years.
The follow up question I wanted to get was, let's say tomorrow you have a gig. Do you still have that nervousness? Do you still have the same, passion that you had the first time when you was 18 years old?
Nervousness? No. You worried about circumstances, like you read the room and are this room very drunk, or are they very dead, or are they very silent? You worry about those things, but no nerves. I think the nervousness comes from new things new challenges. So, right now I'm working on doing a set to get on TV.
Okay.
I would assume that I'm not going to be nervous doing TV just because I've done so much stuff. I've done theaters and stuff, and I look at it as a fairly easy gig once you get there.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I might be nervous going into that. But as far as getting up at a club in front of strangers, no, not nervous. There's no nerves. You worry a little bit, like, or how I have to deal with this or whatever. You'd rather it be a good crowd, but I don't get nervous. I think if you still get nervous after 16 years, it's probably not good. Do I get excitement? Now the other thing is sometimes you lose the excitement for it. But the excitement comes from other things, not just performing. It's working on this new bit that you're working on, writing and creating. That's where some of the excitement comes from.
Sometimes you won't even think about the crowd. You just think about like getting your timing right and getting.
I mean, literally, sometimes I'm just hanging at a bar with talking to one of the other comedians. I don't even step foot until somebody goes, "Hey, I'm going to give this person the light, so they're going to get off stage in 2 minutes. You can get ready," and then I'll walk into the room, they'll close out and I'll step on stage and that's it. There's just zero thought to it. And then once I'm done, get back out there and either continue talking or watching the game on the television if I'm sticking around. So
like nothing.
Some days it's just routine. Yeah. But that's kind of what you want because you're just that proficient about it. It's not that you don't care. It's just that I know what I'm doing at this point and I reserve it would kind of be like, not to equate it to being a surgeon, but it's a big deal for the patient and it's a big deal for the audience. But the surgeon, I don't think, is like freaking out before every surgery. You'd actually rather the surgeon get there, whatever, read a newspaper or read a book, wash his hands, go in there, do the surgery, wash up after that, and be done with it. You want it to be a routine because it's confidence. It's you know what you're doing. So. That's why I don't, it's not that you don't care. It's just that, I know what I'm doing. So you save all the worry and thought about it for when you actually get up there and do it. And then you do your thinking while you're up there.
Definitely.
Then you read the room or whatever. Depending on the night, sometimes I kind of like, if I'm hosting a show or I generally like to step in there a minute or two beforehand and see what the other comedians are joking about and read the room. I prefer to do that, but not always.
Yeah. So, has there ever come a time, let's say you did a club maybe a month ago, and then you go back and you see that a comedian stole your jokes? What's your reaction?
You know what? That's never happened to me, to be quite honest. I've never had it happen, because my jokes are the best and they're so original that nobody could take them. That's never happened to me yet. generally, I've heard things that are similar, but I always chalk it up to, okay, if it's not the exact same phrasing or the same, you can touch on other subjects, or sometimes I'll write something that, sometimes literally I'll write something and think about it and I go, well, somebody else must have also come up with this idea.
Yeah.
And every once in a while that's true. I remember tweeting out when Joan Rivers died, because I love Joan Rivers. She was fantastic.
Yeah.
But I remember tweeting out, she died doing what she loves, having plastic surgery. And in hindsight, even at that moment, I thought, okay, somebody else must have come up with this, but whatever, it's a dumb little tweet. And sure enough, it's like, you're stealing a bit. It's like, all right, relax. I know I'm not the only person that has thought that particular thought. But that one, maybe I I should have not tweeted it, but just, whatever. I would assume that the person is, but if it was a joke, that's also why you want to, when you craft them, you specifically word them in such a way that if someone steals the bit, it's like, oh man, you really went out of your way to steal it. So I don't know. I'm unfortunately the wrong person to ask. I've never had that happen. Most comedians, however, are kind of pussy, so they don't say anything. It's the truth about it, and it depends on who the comedian is. If it's somebody above you, I don't know. You just keep doing it and hope you don't do the same rooms, and you hold a grudge. That's a lot of comedians, unfortunately, they're non-confrontational. I'm like mid-confrontational. I pick my battles, but at some point I will have some confrontations about something, and other stuff I kind of let go.
Okay.
And go, all right, whatever.
What about gigs? Let's say someone who you worked hard and you feel you might be slightly more talented, but they got a gig that you wanted. How do you interact with that? How do you deal with that?
That happens every single second of every day and of every moment that I do comedy. Comedy is completely unfair, just like most of life is unfair.
Sure.
There's plenty of people at any day job that I've ever worked where you go, this person is an idiot. How did they get promoted to do anything? Well, it's the same thing with comedy. It's not necessarily the best person who gets on TV. There's plenty of people who think that there's plenty of people who I have seen in my life in front of an audience bore an audience to tears, who are making quite a nice living doing comedy, and who for some reason are allowed to consistently just, to paraphrase the great Pat Cooper, they should be arrested for loitering in front of an audience because they are doing nothing up there, and they make quite a nice living for themselves doing comedy. Yeah. It's not about being the best, unfortunately. You'd like to think that the cream always rises to the top, but sometimes it's who you know. But you have to deal with that, and you have to work. You have to figure out what works for you. And I'm still sorting that out, to be quite honest. I haven't gotten a TV spot. I almost had one. I think I was supposed to do Letterman years ago, and unfortunately, the person who was booking it while I was there had to resign. Basically, they were fired, let's be honest. And then that went away. And so, but that doesn't mean anything to anybody. Me almost doing a TV show has no significance.
Yeah.
So all you can do is look at it and go, well, I wish if this could have been what, coulda, woulda, shoulda. But the question is, there's only two options, stop or go. That's it. It's 2 gears. There's no reverse. It's stop or go. Do we want to keep going or do we want to stop? And ultimately, I want to keep going because, well, what else am I going to do? Yeah, I can find other things to do, but what else? I don't enjoy those as much as I want to do this.
All right. That's actually, I want to close that because that's actually probably one of the most very inspiring point where you just keep going. It's your passion.
That's it.
Yeah. You just keep going. And thank you, Harry, I want to thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. I'm a fan of your show. I check out your comedy sometimes on YouTube, even though you haven't updated in a while. But
I haven't, man. I'm not gonna lie. You're right. That's one of the things I gotta fix. You're right.
Yeah.
I'm also very selective about what I put up there. But I gotta be a little less selective. I gotta start tossing. I'm gonna toss some new stuff up there soon, though. I promise.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, man.
Hey, man, anytime.
All right, there you have it. That's my interview with Harry Terjanian. Told you it was a cool episode. Like I said, I was trying to make a comedian laugh. It didn't really work, but definitely had a cool conversation. Got into some deep stuff about purpose and passion, and that's kind of the things that I'm into. This, of course, this podcast is a passion project, but it's something that I'm trying to develop into, maybe a career in radio, career in hosting. So I'm trying to follow my passion, but I'm also trying to reconcile, doing the quote unquote right thing, having the quote unquote right career. So I'm definitely a juggling act, and it's good to have conversations with people like Harry, who is doing the same juggling act, making sure he's taking care of his responsibilities, but also but he's taking care of his responsibilities, but also following his passion and pursuing his passion. So definitely that conversation helped me, and I know it's other people out there who are doing the same thing, who's doing the side hustle along with their regular 9 to 5. So great information. Thank you again, Harry. Check out Beige Phillip, the Beige Phillip Show podcast. It's a very, very funny podcast that they have. And what else can I say? Also, email me, j@averagej.com, j@averagej.com. Email me your comments, your thoughts, who should be a guest on the show, who you liked, what you don't like about the show. All of the feedback is necessary. I get a lot of feedback, a lot of cool feedback, especially from the Sevilla Morgan. It was definitely a different conversation that it started, and I appreciate that. And I think this Harry Terjanian episode is going to start another conversation. So definitely email me, j@averagej.com. Follow me on Instagram, I Hate Average Podcast. We always show our upcoming guests and other information about the show. Definitely want to start getting to some events, so definitely follow us on Instagram so you can get information on any events that we're going to have coming up this summer. And talk to you guys next week.